So I want to start this morning by looking at something that I think we all do, which is going to either reveal something very clearly about me, or I'm correct and we all do it. But this idea of having a bias, this idea that we go into situations with a preset idea. So sometimes it might be that we go into a situation and we've already decided we won't enjoy it. Sometimes we go into a situation already sure that it's going to be superb. The problem we have is when we put bias in place, is that our whole mindset is set on it. Everything we do and everything we see is filtered through that bias. So I'm going to say some things, and I just want you to think what your response would be. So you don't need to say anything out loud, but in your head, just where did your mind go? Because that will give you a fairly good indication of what your bias is. So if I were to say reality TV shows, for some of you, in your head, you've just gone, that is rubbish. Why would people watch them? Others of you have just gone, I am so not sure I set the recorder to keep up with the Kardashians, and I need to go home and do that right now. But you see already, some of you already have a decision as to what reality TV shows mean to you. If I said a meeting with the bank manager, where does your mind go? What's your preset assumption? Maybe if I said to you as you were walking one evening, a group of hooded youths was stood in the street that you needed to walk down. Your mind's already taken you places. You've already made assumptions. A graduation day, where'd you go? Maybe if I said Monday morning, how dare I say that, on Sunday morning. But what do you think? Where do you go if I say Monday morning? Because where your mind goes, where you consider those things, says something about how you view them, how you consider them. And the problem is, and if you're anything like me, it tends to put you at the wrong end of the stick. You can often find yourself in the wrong mindset, in the wrong place. So if I said sport, where do you go? Some of you, you've turned off. The idea of sport, just no. Others of you, you're listening. For me, I love sport. But if someone was saying sport and then talked about Manchester United, I'm done. I don't care. So I may have got very excited about this conversation. I might be keen to be involved, but then I've actually realised I'm less interested. What about if the meeting with a bank manager is to tell you that you've got the loan to start a new business? For many of us, we assume it's a negative. What happens if that group of hooded youths are actually your family walking down the street and it's cold and it's raining and actually they're just using the clothing to protect themselves? What if the graduation is actually that you failed to finish the year but you've gone to support your friends? It might be that when I said Monday mornings, you just think, oh, I can't be bothered work. But for some of you, Monday mornings mean you're going on holiday. And actually, that's a really good thing. So I make this example to highlight how simply sometimes we can fall into the trap of deciding before we've even heard, deciding before we've truly seen who's beneath the hood, the outcome. We've already landed on a conclusion. So we're going to look at this morning this parable of the sower, a story that I'm sure many of you have heard numerous times before. Numerous times before. But another fantastic example of how we can hear the words, the parable of the sower, and we've already decided what that means. We've already gone in our heads to the places that we know enough about the story to know what it's talking about. We know what that means to us. We know where we land. We know where the seed is falling. We've already decided. We've come with a bias. So this morning, you'll be glad to know, we're going to unpack it in a completely different way. I hope. I might be wrong. I've made an assumption there. You'll prove me wrong. But we're going to look at it from a different way. So I'm going to invite Helen to come forward, who's just going to read this stunning parable to us. Thank you.
Matthew, chapter 13, verses 1 to 9, and then verses 18 to 23. The parable of the sower. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed fallen among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed fallen on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown.
Thank you very much for that. So I don't know if you're like me, and we hear that parable, and we just conclude, I've heard it before. I know what this one's about. I know where it's going. Am I the hard ground? Is that where I am? Am I the rocky ground where my joy is short-lived? Maybe I'm in a good soil place right now. You know, I'm pretty content. I can hear that and go, yeah, I'm good. And I don't think there's anything wrong with hearing it like that. I think as Jesus spoke, there were people amongst the listeners who that was how he was speaking. He wanted them to look at themselves. He wanted them to assess where they were. But I think the problem is that we hear it so often, we arrive and we've already decided, I've heard this one. I've heard this one. So instead, I want us to consider another way of looking at it. I want us to put down that I've heard this one mindset. I want us to stop the reaction of I'm in a good place, so this morning doesn't matter to me message. And instead I want us to look at that here I am attitude we see in Samuel 3, that hearing what God says and just going, you know what, here I am. I don't know what it entails, I don't know what's next, but I'm here, God. And I want to hear what it is you want to say. As I said, I think we can view this parable in many ways, but we have a huge privilege of being able to put the text together. So the reason that we missed a section out in the middle wasn't that it's not important, just it helped us to focus. We read in 4, as he was scattering the seeds, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Then we have the privilege of this entirety of text, because in 19 we hear, when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their hearts. This is the seed sown along the path. So we have this knowledge of the parable and the explanation hand in hand. We begin to see how it relates to real life. So what does that say for us here this morning? So we're going to put down our bias. If you will with me, we're going to put down the how am I question that so often we read the Bible through the lens of. Where do I fit into this story? How do I fit? Am I okay with the way God's talking? And instead, I want us to ask this question. How are those in my life? How are those in my life? Because this parable allows us to see the world through some very simple terms. But actually, the more time I spend with people, the more I see how accurate these are. The more I begin to see, actually, I can understand people's journeys in faith by using this template. Please hear me at the start. What I'm not saying is for us to stand here going, you know, I'm good soil. So therefore I'm going to look at the rest of you out there and say, You're very thorny. This is bad. You're a rocky person. You need to be softer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we get to stand here going, I've got it all together. Look how short you fall. What I'm saying is we have an unbelievable privilege of journeying with people. And actually just an awareness of where they are can make a huge difference. So we're just going to look at some of these people, some of these groups. As I said, in 4 we read, as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their hearts. And this is the seed sown along the path. So our first group of people is this firm ground. Some of you will have those people in your life that just seem incredibly resilient to the message. Family members, friends, colleagues, people who, when they say to you, what did you do at the weekend? And you start with, oh, well, when I was at church, and they just shut down, block you out. Don't hear it. It'd be very easy to give up on them. It'd be really easy for us to disengage with this group of people. They are a difficult group of people because it feels like everything we say just bounces off. Everything we do is just ignored or dismissed. Every time we tell a story about faith, they find a way of justifying natural causes to have been involved. Often we look at these people and we can consider them as failed, or they've done something wrong, but they're bad people. But actually, each of us in our own way has journeyed from this point. Each of us in our own way has been dismissive of the things we've heard. Each of us has resisted the call of God on our own lives in some way. So how do we engage with them? Because there's those people in our lives. I have the privilege of talking to some of you guys, and I know there's people in your lives that you care dearly for, but you just don't see a way to break through. And I think Jesus lays it out wonderfully for us, because what he says to us is that what's happening is, the seed is there, what you're doing is good. Still the same seed. The possibilities are endless. But it's not breaking through. It's not breaking through into their lives. And actually, I think we need to persist. We need to be praying for these people. We need to keep creating opportunities to spend time with them. We need to break that path down. We need to make it into a place where actually the seeds begin to sit a little bit deeper. And it might be years. And every year on year, the seed just isn't able to sit a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And actually, with the prayer alongside it, we begin to trust God will do something that we can't see. You'll often hear it said that often our role is to plant a seed. That's what we're called to. We have no idea what God's doing in these people's lives. We have no idea when it stopped being that they just genuinely dismissed what we said, and when actually they dismissed it in word, but something in them was changing. These people break my heart. They really do, because having the privilege of working with young people, you find a huge amount of young people in this place. So they find it very easy to dismiss church and God because there's fun stuff going on. All these other opportunities, why do I care about that? But actually, when we see lives changed, when we see people journey from that resilient to coming along to church, it's a huge privilege. A huge privilege. And I think God's calling us to open our eyes to them and saying, you know what, actually, I'm going to commit to doing a little gardening in their lives. I'm going to water the ground. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to spend time with them. I'm going to create opportunity to have coffee, to do things that don't necessarily look church. But please hear me when I say this. You guys are the best version of the gospel we have. Because this is great. And I can say some wonderful things from here, and we can have great PowerPoints, and we can put on great events as a church, but you are the gospel message to the people in your lives. So keep being present, keep going, keep sowing that seed. Keep persisting. You have no idea when that person will turn around one Monday morning and say, what did you do this weekend? And you say, I went to church. And they say, tell me about it. So I believe in a God that does that. I think it's important we don't dismiss those people. Who is there in your lives that would fall into that category? And how is God challenging you to engage with them, to support them, to love them? We move forward. Some fell on the rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. When the sun came up, the plants were scorched. They were withered because they had no root. The seed falling on the rocky ground refers to someone who heard the word at once, receives it with joy. But since they have no root, it lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the world, they quickly fall away. I've always assumed that this rocky place were like rough and ready people. I think it's just that word association of rocky tends to build in our heads that kind of strong and resilient mindset. But actually, I realised how often that was me. And any of you who have done summer camps when you were younger might be able to relate to this, that we go along in the summer to an event, to a camp, whatever it is, and we get fired up. 7 days, just Christians is so easy. Everyone knows what I did last night because everyone was there, and talking about God is good. And I'm fired up. And I come back on the Saturday and I sleep, and then I go to church on Sunday and I tell everyone about camp. And then Monday comes and I'm still fired up. And for some of us, that could last months. For some of us, it lasted weeks. For some, it lasts days. But the problem is it tails. And it drops off. Suddenly we're not that enthusiastic about God anymore. We're not bad people. We were labelled very commonly in the kind of late 90s as kind of like the Christian high. It's what you got at summer camps, a Christian high, enough to keep you going maybe till Christmas. But then you started looking forward to the summer camp the next year because you needed to be fired up again. How often I was the rocky ground terrifies me. Because I'd go and I'd hear all this great stuff and it would produce joy and it would produce fruit, but there was no depth to it. There was no depth, and then when difficulties came, when people started laughing about the stories I was telling about camp, they didn't have the confidence to keep talking. The depth just wasn't there. It still happens. I have the privilege, as I've shared with you, of working and being involved in summer camps, and we still see it. Gosh, we're all adults now. It still happens for us. Monday's good because we had Sunday, but a bad Wednesday and Thursday's gone. We peak and trough our faith and our journey. So who is there in your life that you see, that you get so excited about because they come along to something? They seem so into it, so fired up for it, and slowly they drift. Someone asks, where's so-and-so? Oh, you know how they get. Maybe they're the people that are really enthusiastic as you share your testimony. As you share a little bit about what God's doing in your life, they're engaged, they're encouraged, and they're enthused, but you see it begin to drift. Who is there in your life that's listening, but it's not lasting? Because the truth is, life is difficult. Life is going to be a challenge, and these people find that. But I believe we have something in our faith that enables us to push through, to be loved, to be supported, as I've talked about in the past, to have Jesus there with us. So who are those people? Who are those people that maybe God's calling you to disciple? Tim, I can't disciple anyone. I don't know how. Rubbish. You love Jesus. You see him at work in your life. That's the beginning of discipleship. Journey with them. Speak to them regularly. Encourage them. Offer to pray with them. Give them books. Lend them CDs. Something's gone in. Something's gone in. And yet we're very bad sometimes at following it through. Following it up. The amount of young people, and gosh, even some of us that have engaged in summer camps, and then the small number that end up in church is terrifying. That's not their fault, that's on us as the church. Who is there in your life who's maybe been along for a while, but the difficulties and the time and all of those things have got in the way, and they can't make it? Who is there that maybe needs some gentle encouragement in other ways? Come along to our Connect group. It's in an evening. I know you're busy on Sundays. We've got this event on. We've got this. We've got that. Engage with them. Encourage them. For some of you, as I've been talking, this has stirred a very real image. That idea of the prodigal son. People that we care dearly about, who have been so on fire, and then it's just faded and drifted and they've left. They've walked away. It's painful, incredibly painful. But we see here, as Jesus talks, that actually, with a little bit of gardening, with some work, maybe some heavy lifting, this one's going to need some rocks moved out of the way, but are we committed to that person's life enough to say, you know what, God, I'm going to play my part in bringing them back to a relationship with you? I've seen how good it was for them, God. And I want to play a part in bringing them back. I know it's hard. I want to help them. I want to support them. I want to love them. I said last week, I think the key to a lot of these situations is our vulnerability. Being able to say, you know what, I understand where you're at. I get that difficulty. This is how I process that. This is how my church supports me. Give them an opportunity to see you be vulnerable, for you to invest in their lives. We move on. Other seeds fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. The seeds falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. I think this, if we were honest with each other, would be the largest group of people that we know. The largest group of people. Life is just so busy. We see it ourselves. Life is getting busier. So this is a huge group of people. I think the other side of it is, and the reason it's so big is the largest potential group of pitfalls. Choked up by what the world's got, by the offers of the world. It ranges from addictions to hobbies. It doesn't have to be bad things, it's just busyness and life. And it overpowers, and priorities change, and we start to wonder where they are. You can always tell what someone's priorities are by the things that they never miss. Worked back in Western, and you'd have people just saying, I'm too busy. Too busy, I can't make Connect Group. Can't make it on a Sunday. But if I said, you know what, we're going to watch the football, they would be there. We're as busy as we make ourselves. The people in our lives are as busy as they make themselves. And it'd be very easy for us to dismiss them again and just say, oh, it's so hard to get hold of. Where's our persistence? Where's our willingness to say, you know what, I will change my priorities. I will change some of the things that I'd like to do. Yes, I'd like to stay in this evening and sit down and put my feet up and watch a film. But actually, this is the evening that person is free. So I'm going to go and spend some time with them. I'm going to invest in them. I'm going to create opportunities. Sometimes those opportunities will involve us cutting back some of those thorns. As we said last week, and the week before, CAP, Operation Christmas Child, all these other projects, some of them for people miles away, for some of them people on our doorsteps. If we don't spend time with these people, we'll never know what they need. And if we never know what they need, we can never show them the answers on their doorstep. It's not as bleak as sometimes we might think for people caught up in amongst the thorns. Yeah, it might be hard work. We might have to journey with them for months as they attend AA meetings. For years as they sort their finance out. But slowly and surely, over time, as Jesus highlights what the problem is, we can begin to cut away, to release them, support them as Jesus engages with them. It's an amazing challenge, And I want to ask you, how can you be light in some of their lives? How can you engage with them and allow those crops that are growing to flourish? Sometimes to cut things back, to support them as they let go. Sometimes just to bring the good news of Jesus into their lives. And then finally, still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. The seed falling on the good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yields 160 or 30 times what was sown. The good ones, those people in our lives that are success, the dream, the aspiration is to reach good soil. The problem is, and I don't know if you've done this, because I've definitely done this, and like I said, this is where that bias begins. We go, you know what, I've arrived. I'm at the good soil. Job done. Park it out. Just sit back and enjoy life. But let's not get lazy. The good soil is not the finish. The good soil does something. It doesn't say the good soil has arrived and therefore the farmer just set a deck chair up on it and sat there. It says the good soil continues to produce fruit, continues to produce, continues to be a part of something, continues to help other things grow. The dream is to be here, to get to this place. But that's when work starts. For us, it's looking back and going, where are those people that I can help? Am I producing fruit? For those in our lives, this is the privilege. Who is there in your life that you can help continue to be fruitful? Who is there in your life that just needs to continue to be watered, supported? Who is there in your life that you go, you know what, I see what you're doing and I just want to encourage it? I'm hugely privileged. I have people who are incredibly kind to me, who say wonderful things about some of the times that I've engaged with this church. That's important to me. Don't just say it if you don't mean it, but when it's meant, when God's in it, it's amazing how much it encourages someone to continue doing what they're doing, continue striving for the thing they feel God's called them to. Who is there in your lives that you can just encourage that crop with? Who is there that you can continue to engage with, continue to work through with? I think if we just took a moment and just looked at those people in our lives, the people that you know you might phone because they're abroad, people that you interact with at work, friends that you're having food with this week, you can begin to see how they fit into these areas. The question you have to ask yourself is, am I going to look at them with judgment? Am I going to look at them and go, look at you. You were so on fire for God, but you're a mess now. You've let yourself go. Or are you going to look at them and go, you know what? Actually, I see that problem and I want to support you through it. I want to help cut back some of those thorns. How we engage with people says a huge amount about our faith. How we engage with people says a huge amount about what we believe God is capable of. Those people in your lives, do you believe God can step in? Do you believe he can change their lives, transform them, free them from addictions, bring them to sit amongst us in these pews? Because he will. And he does. And we've seen it. And some of you have stories of people coming to church that you never thought could. Some of you are those stories for other people, for older generations that have prayed for you for years. To break down hard soil, to clear rocks, to cut back weeds. As a church, as a people, the common theme through all of this story is the need for each other. That's the common theme. Obviously God's in there. Don't dismiss that. But the common theme is going to be people. Exposing yourself to others to support them. Being vulnerable with where you're at to allow others to support you. We need church. We need community. We need to be there for each other. Just ask yourself as I close, who is there in this room that you could answer that first question for? Who is there in this room that you know who it is when I said the path? You know who that is for them. The rocky ground, the prodigals. How much of each other's lives do we know? How much are we praying for the lives of the others in this room? So that's important. We are a family, we are together, we are committed. The way we pray for those guys going to Chad is the same way we should be praying for each other's children. I want to see God change this place. I want to see him do some amazing things. We're going to need each other for that. But he can do it. He can break through. This is a stunning parable that we can reflect on our own lives, and we can look at others and say, you know what, I want to make a difference in their life.